Jailbreak news update. So this should be another quick one because we're pretty much done with the jailbreak. It is essentially here already. So this took a very short amount of time, and I think that's because a lot of these exploit developers already had access to this exploit. They've known about it for a long time, and now that the cat's out of the bag with this now being disclosed, this vulnerability, they're now just releasing it. Because normally if this was like a brand new exploit that had just come out and the exploit devs weren't aware of it before, it normally takes a while for them to actually implement a new exploit. There's a lot of testing that goes on. They have to verify stability and all of that, and it takes a while. However, in the space of about a day, we got a bunch of stuff all dropped out. Now, this all happened pretty early in the morning. Around about 4 a.m., the first thing we got was Fail0verflow dropping this PS5 UMTX debug. So apparently, Fail0verflow have known about this since December of 2020. So apparently, it was found by some genius who looked 15 minutes at Freebs and immediately spotted it. This C++ implementation was made when experimenting with increasing reliability after PS5 kernel added some heap randomization features. So this is not an implementation specifically meant to run on the PS5. This is a virtual machine that is set up to kind of mimic the PS5's Freebs implementation. And then you can try and run it in that, so that you can test the exploit and test the reliability in this FreeBSD virtual machine. So it kind of goes over how to set up the virtual machine to try and be as close to PS5 as possible, and then how to run the exploit on that. So not the implementation that we're exactly looking for. We're looking for, obviously, an implementation to be chained with a userland that exploit we can actually run on the PS5 itself. And it didn't take long for that to happen either. So very shortly afterwards, Flats posted on X a implementation for the BDJ. So the BD jailbreak at the Blu-ray drive exploit, that userland exploit, he released an implementation to be chained with that, to essentially create a proper exploit chain on the PS5. So he says, well, this is PS5's UMTX exploit for BDJ, a part related to the exploit actually. So this is the actual kernel Java file that he has posted here. And the whole thing has just been posted. So it looks like it just needs to be added to the Floza BD jailbreak SDK, and essentially compiled to create an ISO that we can burn to a Blu-ray disc, and then run the exploit from the Blu-ray player on the PS5. So you are going to need, of course, a Blu-ray disc. So BD-R or preferably BD-rediscs, which are the rewritable discs, so that updates can be rewritten to the disc, so that you can get newer versions on the same disc. Highly recommend that. So obviously, you'll also need a disc edition console, so that you can run that Blu-ray disc. So this obviously isn't the best situation long-term, because obviously there's people with digital edition consoles who can't run the Blu-ray discs. However, hopefully we will get some kind of WebKit implementation. This was always the first step to get the Blu-ray drive exploit implemented with this, since it works up to 7.61 anyway. So it would be the logical choice. And then after that's implemented, hopefully a WebKit solution can be worked on, so that everybody else who doesn't have a disc console can still benefit from this exploit. Something else interesting that Flats posted, which is this PS5's UMTX exploit for Lua. So supposedly a Lua implementation of the exploit, and not long after he posted the BDJ implementation. So supposedly this is a full version of the exploit written in LuScript instead. And the reason for that is that you could potentially use a save game exploit, because there are some PS5 save files for certain games that use Lua script for the save files, and you can essentially overwrite that save file with this exploit script instead, so that when you load the save file for the game, it will initiate the kernel exploit. Now, I do actually remember Flat saying a long time ago, maybe about a year ago at this point, that he had some kind of exploit that could be loaded through a save file. I remember him kind of joking about jailbreaking the PS5 via a save game. So perhaps this could be what he was referring to all the way back then. It still remains to be seen if this will actually work, and if it does work, what game specifically is needed. I remember that this is very similar to the collateral damage exploit on Xbox, which uses Verbinti 2. Which also uses Lua script for the save files on Xbox, which can be used to dump game files. and using some exploit code in Lua. So it's probably something very similar to that. I'm not sure if Vermintide 2 would be the game. Probably some other game, perhaps on PS5. Maybe a PS4 game. Not sure how that would work with the backwards compatibility. But there's probably some PS5 game or PS4 game that uses Lua script that this could work with. And you could load the exploit by loading the save file. Now again, that's still not perfect for digital edition consoles. Because if you don't already have the game, on your PS5, then that's not really gonna benefit you either. But for people on disc edition consoles, where you can just buy the game, and you can use that to exploit the console, it might be easier to use a save file rather than a Blu-ray disc. So anyway, that's another option potentially. So it'll be interesting to see if we can actually use this with a save file, and actually run the exploit from a save game as well as from a Blu-ray disc. Hopefully the final form will be some kind of WebKit implementation. Supposedly there are a bunch of vulnerabilities that could be exploited into a WebKit exploit and potentially chained with this. And that would be the best solution for everyone. Because the web browser is easy to access. It's easy to update payloads and update the exploit on the fly. You don't have to burn new disks. You don't have to, overwrite a new save file. So that would be the best solution overall. But in the meantime anyway, we have a potential save game exploit and a Blu-ray drive implementation of the exploit. So I may have another video out later tonight if we get some kind of ISO compiled version that we can burn to a disk and actually get running on potentially 7.61, maybe unlock the debug settings. That's another thing I should mention here as well is it's not going to be essentially a jailbreak right now, in the same sense that what we have on a 3.x and 4.x, until we get the Libhijacker implemented on these higher firmwares. Now, we don't know 100% yet if that's possible. If Sony changed anything in these higher updates up to 7.61, that would prevent the Libhijacker from being implemented on those firmwares. For example, like hijacking the Redis server to spawn a daemon process that is used to kind of handle stuff that would normally be handled by kernel patches. Because you can't use kernel patches on the PS5. Because of the hypervisor. And we don't have a hypervisor bypass, so on 3.x and 4.x, we use the Libhijacker, and that's what enables homebrew on the PS5. And game backups and all of that kind of stuff. And emulation, the homebrew loader. All of that stuff requires something like that. And we don't have that yet with this. So for now anyway, we'll probably only be able to unlock the debug settings and use FTP. Get root access to the file system through FTP. That's probably all you're really gonna be able to do in the short term with this exploit until we have something like Libhijacker, like we have on 3.x, that will then allow things like ETA and a PS5K stuff and all of that. So yeah, there will still be a little bit of a wait, potentially, for that to be implemented. And we still don't know how feasible it is to implement that. Did Sony change something about the way the Redis implemented on these higher firmwares? Or have they left that alone up till 7.61? And it's just a simple case of porting it from a 4.3.x and 4.x to 7.61. But anyway, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like.